Good morning. It is 8:12 a.m. on Saturday, July 23rd, 2022. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up, more or less. This is 5 more minutes. So I really always had it in my head that I would be doing these still a little bit more often, but that's the distinction between having a rule that tells you when to do it and then having no rule that tells you when to do it and just saying, well, whatever, is that it's always easy to say, I'm kind of feeling doing a video, but maybe not right this minute. Maybe I'll do it later, and then you don't get around to it. But you know what? That's okay. Because that was kind of the whole point of kind of going through that process and kind of feeling it out and just recognizing, you know what? Like, I like doing videos, but I like them less when I have to every single day. And so here I am, though, because I got a few things built up that I kind of wanted to talk about, and then I just didn't get around to doing a video for. So I'm going to talk about a trio of movies. And then the activity that I'm planning to do the rest of the day. Actually, two of those. So let's get started. The first of these three movies that I'm going to mention is Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, before I had gotten around to seeing it, I had become aware, without knowing really any details, that this one was divisive for Marvel fans. To the point where some people were saying it's like the worst Marvel movie or the worst movie I've ever seen, which... how many movies have you seen? That always is bizarre to me when people use that level of hyperbole. I mean, I get it, but it's at a certain point, it's one of those things where there are lots of movies that I would be comfortable saying that I do not like it, I hate that movie, but I wouldn't say it's the worst movie. Gosh, what would be the worst movie I've ever seen? That's complicated. I usually don't think of movies that way. I don't rank them. I have the same problem if you were asking me to describe my favorite movie. Although, of late, I think I've been leaning towards the primary answer being Speed Racer. But there's a handful of others, and I'll actually come back to that in a moment. But, Thor: Love and Thunder. I liked it. It's obviously subjective, especially because part of what that movie is doing is a very specific vibe that I honestly think of as Taika Waititi's vibe, but is not necessarily going to be for everybody. And so I think maybe part of what is happening here is that, he has never been for everybody, but when Thor Ragnarok came out, there were a bunch of people who thought, hey, this is kind of just a refreshing difference, and they kind of liked it on that basis, but weren't necessarily into the vibe so much as it was a change of pace. But then when he comes along and he makes another movie like that, in fact, kind of goes even more in that direction, the people who weren't necessarily into the vibe are like, wait, the only thing I really liked about Ragnarok was that it was kind of different, and now you're doing it again. I'm not sure I'm into it now. I'm speculating, but the point is, I liked Ragnarok, I liked Love and Thunder, I liked them quite a bit. Hold 1 second. Goodness. Excuse me. I think one of the things... Here, my microphone is sinking on me. One of the things that is true about it is that it has a style of using humor as a coping mechanism for the more serious drama that's happening. And as someone who does that in my real life, I recognized it and vibed with it immediately. However, I get that maybe that's not something that's going to resonate with everybody in quite the same way. And so for some people, they might just feel like it doesn't take anything seriously. It's all just everything's, for the joke. And I'm like, I think you've got the intention backwards. It's more a matter of having this movie's personality be the type that looks at a serious thing and their reaction is to try to deflect with humor. It wasn't for the joke. The joke is the coping mechanism for the drama. That's what I think, anyway. Anyway, I liked it. So, next movie is Magnolia, which is a movie that I have seen before. And the reason I was talking earlier about like the idea of favorite movies is because for a long time, if you asked me to list my top 5 favorite movies, Magnolia would be on it without a doubt. I mean, probably still would. But then I went probably 15 years without rewatching it. And it got to a point where I was starting to feel a little bit like anxious about it, about having rewatched it and about the idea of rewatching it. And so I started thinking about like, what is this feeling? And so before rewatching it, and incidentally, this is going to be one of the movies we talk about on Watching 100 Movies, which we're recording on Sunday. But in rewatching it, I think what I was interpreting that feeling as is like, I'm worried that it won't hold up or that I won't like it as much as I remember. And I wasn't really sure what would have changed in that regard. Like, didn't know what would it have been about it that didn't hold up. But the truth is, as I rewatched it, that it holds up great, but in the sense that that movie is about feelings of vulnerability and the things that we do in life to try to protect ourselves from those feelings, and the things that we do when we can't help but feel those feelings, and all of that. And it is a movie that I can totally understand. Like, the people who don't get it, who don't like it, I shouldn't say don't get it, because that implies something that is not what I mean. The people for whom it does not work. I could totally see how people would say, well, it's too long, it's extremely melodramatic, it has some just weird stuff that feels like it comes out of nowhere. Frogs. And I get it. Like, I understand those objections, but like, for me, it's all of a piece, and it just crushes me every time I watch it. And I think in hindsight, it was actually those very themes of vulnerability that were kind of what was giving me anxiety, is that watching that movie opens up my feelings about stuff in a way that is, can be somewhat cathartic, but also isn't necessarily... It's a little bit how, like, sometimes when you go to clean up your apartment, it gets messier first for a while, right? And so I think that was really what it was coming from. But ultimately, I do still love it. It's still one of my all-time favorites. So third movie is that just last night I went to see Nope, the newest movie from Jordan Peele, who also did Get Out and Us. Just for context, I'm not going to spoil anything about Nope, just incidentally. Just for context, I think Get Out is a masterpiece, and Us has some really cool stuff in it, but ultimately I just feel like I'm not sure that it ultimately comes together to say anything specific. It feels a little bit like not not that it even has to, right? Like, so there are lots of movies that are just out there to be thrilling entertainment and that sort of thing. But I think Us has pieces that feel like they are meaningful, but then they don't necessarily all add up to something coherent. And we wouldn't even necessarily expect that they should, except that Get Out does that extremely well. And so it's like, it's not doing the same thing as Get Out did. And I think for some people that's like makes it a disappointment. For me, I don't know that I'm disappointed by it so much as I just feel like I don't necessarily dig it as much as Get Out. Nope, again, without getting into the details, I would say falls somewhere in the middle between those two. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not even really going to talk about the trailer. But what I would say is it's more coherent than Us by the end, but it does have a few things in it that sort of feel like that was in there to be cool. It doesn't really contribute to the theme, or things, things like that. And then it's also, I think, you could say maybe it starts a little bit slow, but overall, I really liked it. It's got some great scares. It's got some really cool moments. It is periodically extremely funny. I love the cast. Great stuff. I highly recommend it. Like, if you feel like you're into those movies, like, by which I mean kind of, I don't know, elevated horror movies, prestige horror movies. I mean, there's a lot of weird terminology about stuff like that these days. But in any case, I liked it a lot. So, just to wrap up this little video, which is certainly more than 5 minutes at this point, but later today, I'm going to a seafood boil with some friends, and that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that, except for the part where it's 95 degrees and 60% humidity out. Ugh. But, what are you going to do? What you're going to do is you're going to go to a seafood boil with some friends and stay by the air conditioner. So I'm looking forward to that. And then later today, our Saturday night group, we finished up our campaign of Root, the role-playing game, last week. And so this week, we're going to be starting Journey Through the Radiant Citadel, which is the newest D&D book. And we're going to start tonight at 7 with, everyone's got their characters kind of mostly established, but we're going to flesh them out a little bit, do a little bit of session 0, and then roll right into the beginning of the adventure. Looking forward to it, and it's going to be great. So in the meantime, I will talk to you again soon for 5 more minutes.